We're not going to allow QJ to run up and down the field. They're going to play. They're going to stack 9 in the box. You're going to have to prove that you can beat us with your arm. That's it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think, look, everywhere I've been, even when we had veteran quarterbacks or whatever, he get 1 or 2 reps. I know. Obviously, normally, I don't know how it was, but we had 10 plays. We ran 10 plays per period. Offense got 10, defense got 10.
Right.
Offense got 10, defense got 10. Okay, special teams do what they do, whether it was punt return, kick return, whatever the case may be. And then guess what, Ocho? Another 10, another 10, another 10, number 10, so forth and so on. But you mean to tell me Shedeur can't get 1 rep, 2 reps with the starters?
I mean,
out of 10 reps, he can't get 1.
He calls it out in plain words.
What is up, everybody? And let me tell you something right now that's going to blow your mind. I just got off a call with someone who has direct knowledge of what's happening inside the Browns facility. And what they told me about Shedeur Sanders is absolutely insane. This goes way deeper than anything we've been discussing publicly. And the information I'm about to share with you connects dots that nobody else is connecting right now. We're talking about a situation that's been building for weeks. And it's all coming to a head in a way that's going to shock the entire football world. Let me start by saying this. Everything you've been hearing about the back injury, about the practice limitations, about the careful management of Shedeur Sanders, there's another layer to this story that makes complete sense once you understand what's actually motivating the decisions being made. The Browns organization is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and whether you agree with their strategy or not, you need to understand what's really happening here because it affects everything moving forward. So let's rewind to the draft. Cleveland makes the decision to select Shedeur Sanders, and immediately there's this massive wave of excitement from the fan base. Finally, a potential franchise quarterback. Finally, someone who could be the answer they've been searching for since the franchise came back. The hype was unreal, the expectations were sky high, and everyone assumed we'd see him on the field relatively quickly given how bad the quarterback situation had been. But from day one of training camp, there was a very deliberate approach to how they handled Shedeur. Limited first-team reps, very controlled media access, careful messaging about development timelines and learning curves. At the time, most people interpreted this as standard rookie quarterback management. Nothing to see here, just a team being cautious with their investment. Looking back now with the information I have, that interpretation was missing a huge part of the picture. What I've learned is that there's been significant internal debate from the very beginning about the best way to deploy Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not talking about minor disagreements or different coaching philosophies. I'm talking about fundamental divisions within the organization about what this season is supposed to accomplish and what role Shedeur plays in that vision. One faction, let's call them the traditionalists, believes strongly that throwing a rookie quarterback into a difficult situation with a struggling offensive line and inconsistent receiving core would be organizational malpractice. They point to examples throughout NFL history of promising young quarterbacks who got ruined by being played too early in bad situations. David Carr getting destroyed in Houston. Tim Couch getting beaten up in Cleveland's expansion years. The list goes on of talented players whose careers never recovered from early trauma. This group argues that Shedeur needs to sit this entire season, watch and learn, let the offense improve around him, and then next year when hopefully the line is better and the weapons are more established, that's when you hand him the reins. Patient development, setting him up for success rather than failure, protecting your investment. It's a logical argument that has historical precedent supporting it. But then there's the other faction, the progressive thinkers who believe that the entire nature of quarterback development has changed in the modern NFL. They point to recent examples of quarterbacks who played immediately and thrived. C.J. Stroud in Houston last year, Jaden Daniels this year in Washington, Caleb Williams getting thrown into the fire in Chicago. The old model of sitting for years doesn't apply anymore because college quarterbacks are more prepared than ever. Offensive systems are more quarterback friendly, and you need to know quickly what you have so you can build accordingly. This group argues that every game Shedeur sits is a wasted opportunity to gather critical information. They believe he's mentally tough enough to handle adversity based on what he dealt with at Colorado. They think the offense isn't going to magically get better next year anyway, so you might as well get him experience now. And they're frustrated that the organization is letting fear drive decision-making instead of being proactive about their future. Now here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just abstract philosophical debates happening in conference rooms. These are are real disagreements between powerful people within the organization, and those disagreements are affecting everything from practice schedules to game planning to roster decisions. The tension has been building all season, and what we're seeing play out publicly with the injury situation and the playing time questions is really just the visible manifestation of these deeper conflicts. The back injury that kept Shedeur out of practice. I'm now told there's more context to that situation than what was shared publicly. Was there some physical discomfort? Probably. Was it severe enough to keep an NFL quarterback off the practice field? That's debatable. What actually happened is that the medical staff and coaching staff had conversations about the risk-reward of pushing through minor discomfort versus being cautious, and the decision was made to hold him out. But here's the key detail. That decision wasn't made in a vacuum. It was made in the context of ongoing debates about when and how to play him, and the timing coincidentally aligned with a moment when external pressure to play him was reaching a peak. The organization needed a reason to pump the brakes on that momentum, and a minor injury that gets treated as more significant than it actually is provides that cover. I want to be clear that I'm not saying anyone lied. I'm saying that in the gray area between completely healthy and seriously injured, there's room for interpretation and discretion about how to manage a player, and those discretionary decisions are being influenced by larger strategic considerations about Shedeur's development timeline. When he came back to practice this week, looking completely healthy, dancing around, throwing with full velocity, that wasn't surprising to people inside the building because they knew the injury was never that serious. But it was surprising to outside observers who had been told he was dealing with something significant enough to miss practice entirely. That disconnect between internal knowledge and external perception is creating confusion and frustration among fans and media. What I'm hearing now is that the bye week forced some real conversations that had been avoided. With half the season gone, sitting at 2-6, facing an extremely difficult remaining schedule, people had to look honestly at where things stand. The playoffs are essentially impossible, the division is out of reach, you're playing for draft position whether anyone wants to admit that publicly or not. In that context, the argument for continuing to protect Shedeur and wait until next year starts breaking down. What exactly are you waiting for? Better players around him? Maybe you get some improvements in the offseason, but this roster is what it is. A better record to insulate him from pressure. That's not happening this year regardless of who's at quarterback. The perfect moment when everything aligns. That moment might never come. So now you're seeing a shift in the internal calculus. The progressive faction is gaining ground in these debates because the traditionalist argument relies on assumptions that don't hold up under scrutiny. The season is lost, so the downside of playing him and struggling is minimal. You need information to make off-season decisions, so getting him real game action is valuable. And he's shown in practice that he's physically and mentally ready, so you're not throwing an unprepared player into the fire. The Jets game represents a potential turning point, but not necessarily in the way people think. I'm not hearing that there's a definite plan to start Shedeur on Sunday. What I am hearing is that he will be active, he will be the backup, and there's genuine openness to getting him playing time if the opportunity presents itself. That's very different from the previous stance, which was basically that he's nowhere near the field no matter what happens. What would constitute an opportunity? Could be the starter struggling badly and the coaches deciding to make a change. Could be the game getting out of hand either direction and deciding to give Shedeur some low pressure snaps. Could be an injury situation, though obviously nobody wants that. The point is that the door is open now in a way it hasn't been before. There's also discussion about the final third of the season and how to approach those games. If you're sitting at 2-8 or 2-9 heading into December, what's the argument for not playing Shedeur at that point? You're not competing for anything. Your draft position might actually improve by losing, and you desperately need to evaluate whether this guy is your quarterback of the future. Some people in the building are advocating for a planned transition where Shedeur starts the final 4 or 5 games regardless of how things go earlier. Treat it like an extended audition. Give him real reps against NFL defenses. See how he handles adversity, how he processes information, how he performs under pressure. Gather all the data you need to make informed decisions in the offseason about what direction to take the roster. Others are more cautious, arguing that you can't just quit on the season publicly like that. Players in the locker room are competing for their jobs and their next contracts. You can't tell them we're giving up and playing the rookie just to see what happens. That undermines team culture and creates resentment that carries into next year. Both perspectives have merit, and right now it's unclear which approach will win out. What is clear is that the conversation has shifted dramatically from Shedeur definitely isn't playing this year to Shedeur is probably playing at some point and we need to figure out when and how. The practice reports this week are important because they're giving the coaching staff current information about his readiness. If he continues looking sharp, making good decisions, throwing accurately, demonstrating command of the offense, that builds the case for getting him on the field sooner. If he looks rusty or confused or hesitant, that supports waiting longer. From everything I'm hearing, he's looking really good. The velocity is there, the accuracy is there, the confidence is there. He's not making mental mistakes or struggling with the playbook. He's functioning like a quarterback who's ready to play professional football. The question isn't about his capability at this point. The question is about organizational willingness to pull the trigger. One factor that hasn't been discussed much publicly is the chemistry with receivers. Jerry Jeudy in particular has been inconsistent this year, and some of that is absolutely on him with drops and concentration issues, but some of it is also timing and trust with the quarterback. Different quarterbacks have different release points, different ball speeds, different tendencies about where they put the ball. Building that chemistry takes reps. If the Browns are serious about Shedeur being the future, then building that chemistry with Jeudy and the other receivers needs to start happening. You can do some of that in practice, but game reps are different. The speed is different. The pressure is different. The consequences are real. The sooner you start that process, the more advanced the offense can be next year, when presumably Shedeur will be the starter regardless. The offensive line situation remains a concern, but it's being overblown in my opinion. Yes, the pass protection has had issues. Yes, Shedeur will probably take some hits, but he took plenty of hits at Colorado and kept getting up. NFL quarterbacks get hit. That's part of the job. You can't protect him forever. At some point, he has to prove he can handle the physicality of professional football. What's actually more important than the pass protection is the play calling and scheme. Tommy Rees taking over as the offensive coordinator could actually work in Shedeur's favor if and when he gets his chance. Fresh perspective, new concepts, no baggage or history with the previous quarterback. That's a clean slate to build something with Shedeur as the focal point. I've also heard that Shedeur has been incredibly professional throughout this entire process. No complaints, no drama, no social media nonsense. Just preparing like a starter, even though he's not starting. Staying ready for his opportunity whenever it comes, supporting his teammates. That maturity is not lost on people in the building, and it's building credibility for him with coaches and players alike. The business side of this cannot be ignored either. The Browns need to sell tickets for the final home games. They need to keep fans engaged. They need to give people a reason to pay attention to a lost season. Shedeur Sanders starting would accomplish all of those things immediately. The stadium would be packed. Jersey sales would spike. National media would cover the games. From a pure business perspective, playing him is a no-brainer, but football decisions can't be made purely on business considerations. You have to do what's best for winning football games and developing your players properly. The challenge is figuring out what that actually means in this specific situation with this specific player at this specific point in the season. My prediction, based on everything I'm hearing, is that Shedeur plays meaningful snaps before this season ends. Whether that starts this week against the Jets or happens later in the year, I believe we will see him on the field in real game action. The momentum is moving in that direction. The internal debates are shifting toward the pro-playing camp, and the circumstances of the season support making that move. When it happens, the evaluation process becomes critical. Coaching staff, front office, media, fans, everyone will be watching every throw, every decision, every moment, trying to determine if this is the guy. That's enormous pressure for a rookie, but it's also the reality of playing quarterback in the NFL. If he can't handle that pressure now, he won't be able to handle it next year either. What happens if he plays and struggles? That's the fear keeping some people hesitant. If he comes in and looks overwhelmed, throws multiple interceptions, can't move the offense, you risk damaging his confidence and creating doubt throughout the organization. But you also get valuable information about what he needs to work on and whether he's truly franchise quarterback material. What happens if he plays and excels? That changes everything. Suddenly the entire offseason plan shifts because you know you have your quarterback. Draft strategy changes, free agency approach changes, the whole organizational timeline accelerates. That's the upside that makes playing him worth the risk. The truth is you don't know until you actually do it. All the practice observations, all the meeting room evaluations, all the film study in the world doesn't replace real game experience against NFL defenses. The Browns need that information, and the only way to get it is by playing him. So keep your attention locked on Cleveland because this situation is evolving rapidly. What seemed like a settled question 2 weeks ago is now wide open. The door is open opening for Shedeur Sanders, and once it opens, it might never close again. This could be the beginning of a new era for the Browns, or it could be another disappointment in a long history of quarterback failures. Either way, we're about to find out. Make sure you're subscribed, because when this breaks, when Shedeur finally gets his shot, you're gonna want comprehensive coverage breaking down everything that happens. The story is just beginning, and it's going to be absolutely wild watching it unfold.